Well, do we have something special for our listeners this week? This is a special bonus episode of the Your Morning Coffee podcast with 30 Tigers owner David Macias.
Yeah, and it was exciting, not the least of which because it was David Macias, but it was also the first time that you and I have actually done an interview in person at the same time. And it was a blast having him come over to your house, meet your dogs, and hang out. And he is a wonderful person to just chat with. And he's a huge music guy and a wonderful businessman. And just we had a fantastic conversation. And I can hardly wait to do it again.
Yeah, it was really good. I like the fact that he just seems like a good guy. And the company, they just seem like good people. They want to do the right thing. So now, without further ado, here's David Macias on the Your Morning Coffee podcast. Let it roll.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
David, so great to see you. Thanks for making the trip all the way out. You are the first person that we've had in person.
Yes.
Well, that makes me feel good.
And this is the first time you and I have done a show in person.
That's right.
Ever. We started during
It's
COVID.
a special occasion.
It's a special occasion. We're glad you're here then.
Yeah, we've done some college presentations together, but never...
Not an episode.
Not an episode. So we are thrilled that David Macias is here from 30 Tigers. And I'd like to kick it off, for those with no prior knowledge, talk a little bit about... first about 30 Tigers, and we'll dig into your path. But 30 Tigers is unique in the music industry. And I'd like you to sort of describe for folks, what is 30 Tigers all about?
Well, we're, I'd like to think of us more as a label than a label services company. We just have a label services model, but we really try to think very holistically about and participate actively in the marketing of the records. I think some label services companies are a little bit more limited in what they do, and some aren't. I mean, I think that I wouldn't say we're unique, but I will say that in terms of in the early days, sort of thinking about and striving to be a holistic solution rather than just a conduit to distribution. And I think we were early on in that. And I think that, as I've always tried to invest. We'd grow a little bit and I'd add another person or two, and we'd grow, a little bit and we'd add a person or two. And, and next February will be our 25th anniversary.
Wow,
and
congratulations.
Thanks. And, we've got a great staff of people, including Kayla Gans, who brought us together.
That's
and
right.
So, but we all of our artists, own their own recordings. So we don't own anybody's masters. We don't license them. People are free. I mean, we want them to ideally, stay with us forever and ever, but if they, you know, need to move on to realize their greater good, then they're free to do so. And we protect ourselves with overrides and things like that. But you know, artists tend to, you know, they can, I feel like we can look at the sales numbers of our artists compared to those same artists when they've been with majors, and we compare very favorably. Not that there's any, you know, diminution of quality in what they're doing or anything like that, but they're not better than us. And we're really proud of the artist community that we've built. It's a very eclectic, I like to say perversely eclectic group, but you know, our artists get to keep not only ownership of the masters, but 75% of gross receipts. They keep 100% of all ancillary revenues. So if a song gets, you know, used in a TV show, or they earn, you know, like with Sound Exchange, they'll earn not only the artist side, but the label side as well. You know, they basically are their own label. Like Jason Isbell is Southeastern Records, but every deal is sort of a slash deal. It's Southeastern Records / 30 Tigers. And we're, you know, we're just simply in service to our artists, and, you know, and we'll try to learn in an ever-changing world what that means to be of service to them anew all the time.
Well, if I was an artist today, this is where I want to be.
Very attractive. Yeah, for sure. Share with us your sort of musical journey to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Lakeland, Florida, and for whatever reason, I was just a big music nerd. You know, almost out of the womb. I don't know. I mean, my parents weren't musical or anything like that, but I just.
What were some of those early records that you?
Oh, my two early favorites. But the first album I ever bought with my own money that I saved up for was Olivia Newton-John, "Clearly Love."
Okay,
so
no judgment there.
I got yeah, but I mean, I was like, I don't know, 7 or 8, you know. So, and I was. The 7 or 8 year old version of me is very surprised and disappointed that you know, that I didn't wind up marrying Olivia Newton-John. But
line starts behind us, by the way.
Yeah. So
Olivia Newton-John.
But you know, I think when I started to really develop more of a music, you know, consciousness, you know, I mean, I would ask for the Rolling Stone, you know, album guide every year, and, you know, the encyclopedia of rock and all that stuff. And you know how, like, young dudes like to, you know, be able to show some mastery over things, and some people it's cars and some people it's sports. Well, I was always the guy who, you know, when I was 11 or 12, like, I knew who all the members of Black Sabbath were. So that was social capital for me. And I just kind of, you know, went with it. And I got a job working in a record store, Carousel Records in Lakeland, Florida, when I was 15. Wow. And I just spent all my money and all my time just thinking about music and all that stuff. And I just kind of either really love music, or I have a real lack of imagination, but I've just never quit doing it. So
what were some of those first shows when you were working in the record store? And
well, I didn't go see many shows I mean, not many people came down to, you know, to Central Florida. I remember, you know, the few shows that I would go to, I'd drive over to Tampa and I'd go shopping at Vinyl Fever. And then I'd go to show, but I remember seeing Flock of Seagulls. That was a big, that was a big one. Yeah. And some people would come through Lakeland Civic Center. Like, I saw Fleetwood Mac. I saw Rush twice, you know.
And then how did you make the jump from being in record retail to being on the label side of things?
Well, I kind of aimed myself towards that. You know, I didn't know what the music business was, but I knew that it probably wasn't in Lakeland, Florida, but might be in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So when I was 18, I moved up to Atlanta and got a job at a record store up there. And this was in the SoundScan Mike Shallett days. It was, you know, where, so I was working at a store where we were a billboard reporter. And so I would talk to a lot of the labels and build relationships. And I was politely persistent about, you know, one of them, getting me a job. So my first paid gig was an A&M paid internship with Karen Glauber.
Okay.
And she was my boss, and love her. And then I got a full-time job working at Arista when I was 21. So I basically set down my bags, and they were like, here's Whitney Houston's first album, go do something. And so I got sort of indoctrinated in the world of Clive Davis. And
Arista was a powerhouse.
Yeah, for sure.
And then did you do Arista Nashville?
I did. Yeah, when that started to blow up, I wound up leaving for about 18 months. And then when the Nashville division started up, I got invited to come back in there. And so I did that for about 8.5 years. And, and that was right at about the time where things started to, the music business started shedding people, and I was, sort of in the mix there. And that's when I decided to start my own company. And I just, I didn't know what it was, but I just didn't know I wanted to, it felt too insecure to just try to climb back on and hang on with, so I started this company in 2001.
So you wanted to do your own thing. What were those first few artists that trusted you and you collaborated with to kick off 30 Tigers?
Well, I mean, in the first year and a half, we were a consultancy, and I didn't necessarily quite have the vision of what we were going to be, but I knew that a lot of artists and executives were being, sort of cast out. I was, one of them, and so I thought, well, rather than trying to get somebody to, hire me for $75,000 a year, let me, and it would be a startup, and we'd have one or two records, and automatically, it would put a lot of pressure. My very presence there would put financial pressure on the entity and make it less viable if we only had one or two things. And I'm very into I read a lot about business, and I love thinking about incentives and structures and things like that. So, my thought was rather than try to get one person to hire me for $75,000, because they don't need a $75,000 employee if they just have one or two records or it's an individual artist. So let me just get 10 people to hire me for $7,500, and we'll, do the help them think through their marketing, explain the marketing plan to the supply chain, and voila, we have a business, and it was about a year and a half into that, I got a call from Ken Antonelli, who was the president of Red at the time. And he was like, man, we really love the work you do. And I had worked with him before, he's like, you really prepare our sales reps to go in, and we want you to bring everything through to us. Now, this was 2002, and so, and this was a year before iTunes. So, if you didn't have physical distribution, you were kind of, you were a local act, selling, CDs or whatnot out of the back of your van. And so, I sort of very quickly put it together that if we, had a sort of a thing where I could bestow distribution on people, then I was going to get more business. And so, I was like, okay, well, I'll bring everything to you, but I want this kind of a setup. And he consented, and that's been kind of the core business ever since.
Wow, it's a great story. And again, from the start to where you are today, what a completely different organization, a completely different thing. And when did it start to morph to what we see today?
Well, I think the basic structure is still essentially that. I mean, we still, I set it up to operate on about a 10 to 12% gross margin, with about, 7% of gross sales, dedicated to overhead. So it gave me some good targets to shoot for. And if we're making, 3 to 5% net margin, that's either profit or margin for error. And if I run a tight ship and don't allow myself to, lose my mind and cut deals I shouldn't be cutting, then, I've had to employ a certain amount of discipline to make this model work. But, when it works for an artist, they get to keep ownership of their work, which is a very spiritual thing for them. They created this thing, and to be able to, own it, to be able to have more control over how it's explained to the world, those are very, important things. And but I would say initially in the first couple years, we were more focused on just sort of like, okay, well, I mean, not that they, weren't, really great artists, but like, Susie Boggess is a great artist, but she had a certain amount of sort of market cachet, and we got to work with her through a label called Compadre. And the first one that we did the distribution deal was a great band called The Great Divide out of Oklahoma that did a record on Atlantic. Great band. So I think probably when the whole idea of curation kind of where I felt confident enough to feel like, was really after the Avett Brothers. That was to me, the most important signing, early signing that we ever, did, because then, we showed people that we could do the cool shit, and then we started getting other opportunities. And then, and as my understanding of how our, advocacy could take shape, I knew the more credible we were artistically, the more we could help our artists that were credible. And it just sort of, we just developed a momentum around that. But we're still pretty eclectic. We do a lot. I mean, we do a lot of things, but it all makes sense to me. I'm pointing to my head for those of you who like in here in my fevered brain. It all makes sense to me. And and as long as I know that our infrastructure can support it, and a lot of times I'll have to invest ahead of time. When we were kind of moving into the hip hop space and all that, I knew I had to bring on people that were going to come in and be able to serve the artists, better than the existing staff that we had, So, so that's our story.
Well, you're talking about the music. I want to talk about your people a little bit. You had mentioned a second ago our mutual friend Kayla, who sort of brought us together. I'll give you one example. My former intern is over with Cameo over at M Theory, and she's Caroline, and she's killing it. Yeah. And there's no bigger thrill in my career seeing some young person find their footing and excel. Well, you've got a great staff, and the people that I've met, they really enjoy working there and working for you. Talk about your people and how they come about, how you choose them.
Well, I mean, we really have, our culture, and I know this sounds way too hippie for most people, but I really our sort of our core values are love and service, and I talk about it all the time. Be loving to people, want the best for them, even if that means that their greater good lies outside of the 30 Tigers. And then, I tell my team, like, we did not create this music. We do not own this music. So we are here strictly in a capacity to serve. So you better serve. And I think that, we tend to attract, people that have just a skosh of idealism, and that really like showing up to work every day and feeling proud. I certainly feel that way. The fact that I feel like we go toe to toe with anybody out there in terms of our infrastructure, our instincts for storytelling, our commitment to continue to learn, and what that means. That I think it creates an environment that certain types of people gravitate towards, and so we tend to want to bring in, kind people with a heart of service, and then it all works out okay.
That's wonderful. And mentioned, of course, you're based in Nashville, but you have offices elsewhere in the country as well.
Well, I don't know about offices. We have people elsewhere. We have two people in New York. We have two out here in LA, and then somebody in Atlanta. We have people not for any strategic purpose, but in Raleigh, North Carolina, and in Richmond, Virginia. They just live there, and we have 4 people over in London, and it's a thing. I mean, we've grown to the point now where we're the second largest billing, label within the Orchard system. We're apparently very far behind Bad Bunny and Remus. So, because I tend to be, I try to be sweet about it, but I'm a little competitive.
Sure.
And I asked somebody at the Orchard, I was like, okay, so we're number 2, what do I got to do to get to number one? And they were like, you're so far away, you should probably not even think about it. So I was like, okay, well, at least I don't have to worry about that.
It's just hurtful. It's just hurtful.
Yeah.
Another thing that, when people talk about you behind your back, one of the things they talk about is diversity, your passion for minority communities. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and tell us about the Black Opry.
Oh, sure. So yeah, I graduated from college. I got my degree at Tennessee State University, which is a historically black university, and I did that quite purposefully. I grew up in the South. For those of you, I'm on a podcast. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a white, hairy Southerner, and but the that sense of and again, I never, I didn't really sort of grow up with any sort of prejudices to overcome or anything like that, but it all felt very theoretical to me. It all felt very like that I just wasn't really, I just didn't, know that many people in the black community or anything like that. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to go and sort of remove the otherness from my experience. And it was a life-changing, experience, and it sort of put me on a path. And again, I didn't really do it with any idea that there was going to be any professional gain from it. But yet, it wound up being that way. One of the other sort of early things that happened to me that was a fortuitous event and gave me a lot of trust in my ability as a creative was, one day I was sitting in Africana Studies class, and which was the study about being black in America. I was the first white person to have taken that class in like 3 years, and we're talking about white appropriation of black culture. We had a 2-day, week long, dive into all that. And I thought about, how I grew up. I grew up in Florida. Stephen Foster, wrote our state song, way down upon the Swanee River. And I knew enough about Stephen Foster to know that his early hits were written for the minstrel stage. So his experience was sort of the 1840s version of appropriating black culture. And I also knew enough about him to know that, he became a figure of shame, and his music sort of in the 1970s sort of became a signifier for racial prejudice and things like that. And I just thought, he became famous through race. He became infamous through race. So, and I just thought, well, this is a very American story, and I want to tell that story in the only way that I could think of, which was an album project. And so, that album, I put it together with the help of my co-producers, Steve Fischel and Tamara Saviano, and the record did very well and wound up winning a Grammy. And it was like, wait a minute, that guy that sold Alan Jackson records to Walmart did that, And so it sort of opened up the door about people trusting me more, me trusting myself more to trust what a good story was and all that. And so, but I wouldn't have had that experience had I not opened myself up. I mean, I'm a big, economics nerd, and I'm a big fan of there's an economist named Gary Becker. He won the Nobel Prize in, I don't know when, the early 90s or whatever, but he wrote a book, and he's out of the University of Chicago, which is a very sort of conservative leaning thing, but he wrote a book on discrimination and showed in great detail how discrimination, both from a financial standpoint, hurts the obviously the people that are being discriminated against, but also the people doing the discriminating. Mm-hmm. You leave yourself bereft of relationships and opportunities and understanding about how to do things. So it just on no level did it make any sense. And then so the Black Opry thing came together. Somebody had recommended Holly G, who's a force of nature, who I'm very proud to have, she's now working with us, directly. Somebody had put us together, and I really admired what she had built. I mean, she, came from completely outside the music business, and she was like, I'm a country fan, but I'm tired of like nobody. I go to, anytime I go to a shows, I don't see anybody who looks like me on the stage or in the audience, and I want to build a community. I know I'm not the only one. And she just went out there and just hustled and built this scene and community, and it grew to the point where it was, they were headlining at Newport, and I mean, it was very admirable. And so a mutual friend put us together, and we just really hit it off and became friends. And she was, starting a label imprint to help support artists and all that. And then, and then now she's officially as part of the team now. So I'm very, very happy about that. Very proud she's around.
Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I first got my first major label job, I found that, which was at Warner Brothers Records at the time, a fairly progressive label actually, but it sure seemed siloed to me at the time. You have a black music department, mm-hmm. and never the twain shall meet in some cases, and this would have been in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. Are we getting better in the music industry than it was, let's say, in the early 90s?
Overall, I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. I still think things feel fairly siloed in certain ways. I mean, we really try not to be, and we have both we have members of our staff that are black that work in black music. We also have members of our staff that are not, that are working in, like our head of video, that keeps up our relationship with Vivo and YouTube, is a young woman of African descent, very talented, but it's not. And then I'll extend that to to the queer community as well, I try to make sure that, I mean, I think it's a beneficial thing. I mean, whatever the morality of being kind and loving people where they're at and all that kind of stuff, even beyond that, it just makes us more, one of the things that's made me the saddest about our, recent turn, politically is the turn away from DEI, where, mm-hmm. Companies even feel like it's a thing. And I'm not trying to be a woke can I swear on this? I'm not trying to be some woke motherfucker. I'm just trying to be a pragmatic business person who wants to be, open and just love people where they're at and help make music that, that serves their community, that, scratches their itch or whatever. It's not any more complicated than that. I'm not an expert on gender studies, but I tell my friends who struggle with the idea of supporting, people in the trans community and all that. I'm just like, look, just show enough respect. Like, I don't need to understand the variations of gender and sexuality. I'm just going to be nice to people and meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. You don't, that's all you have to do, know? And so, and I just think we're a better company for it.
Yeah. So, I was moderating this panel on A&R and data, and half of the discussion was about all of these different dashboards and data places that you can get information. And we're at this point now. Well, we asked him, one of the A&R people. We said, "How do you find new talent today?" And he said, "I look for a lineup around the block on a Tuesday." And I thought that was so refreshing that there was this new data, and then there's sort of the old school looking for passion. I pulled up this quote because I thought it was really interesting. It said, "Music is abundant, but attention is scarce." And it's a whole different ecosystem now from when you started out. Mm-hmm. So, but you've done a really good job of sort of balancing both the data analytics, the business side of it, and sort of that signing good people, hiring good people, surrounding yourself with good music. How do you sort of reconcile and balance?
Well, put it this way, I'd be lying if I said I didn't pay any attention to data, but I also don't pay that much attention to data. Because honestly, even from a pragmatic business standpoint, by the time something really spikes, chances are every major label in town is lining up they're the ones lining up around the block on a Tuesday to make their services available to these artists. From a business standpoint, I try to get there 15 minutes before they do, and try to serve the artist. And so I just as a pragmatic competitive strategy, I kind of have to do that, I like doing that as well. Now, having said that, when data is a tool just like anything else, but what I try when confronted with favorable data, what I try to do is look at it and understand why it's happening. It's not just like, oh, it's taking off, I'm going to get out my checkbook and write a check. It's like, why is it taking off, and can we extrapolate what is happening? Again, like, every artist that connects with humans is connecting, like something is happening there. And even if it happens sort of in an instant, there's something happening there. And if we can understand that and feel like we can extrapolate that and tell a story of the artist as the font of this particular, work or body of work, and get the storytelling right so that the work feels like an inevitable outgrowth of who they are, their character, their experience, or whatever, then we can help fill in the gaps and have people believe the artist, because a lot of times, this attention economy that we're in is, it's daunting, because you're people are just, it's like they're getting waterboarded with music and artists and all this kind of stuff. And when you're talking about, I heard on a fairly recent episode about, you got to get their attention in 2 seconds. And
right.
It's just like,
yes.
So, and I think there's a certain amount of, truth to that for people that engage in that medium, but not everybody does. I think one thing I'm trying to get my head around right now is, how do we build community that's a little bit more patient, that's a little bit more, that wants to sort of escape the algorithmic hustle that they are, the treadmill, I guess. And I don't know what that means. I'm doing a lot of thinking about it right now, though. But in the meantime, for those artists that are on that algorithmic treadmill, I'm feeling like we have to be ever learning and ever vigilant about moderating our storytelling to those particular mediums. I feel like the basic premise of what we're trying to do hasn't changed, but the mediums definitely have an effect on how that looks and what kind, how you organize the storytelling. So that's sort of the ever present, challenge that we're doing a lot of thinking about right now.
Well, and kind of along those lines, what does true artist development look like over, say, 24 to 36 months these days? Or for you guys, what, milestones signal durability?
Well, I think, two artists that we work with, like Red Clay Strays, Wondering Why took off, and it was a very viral and organic thing. And it was even starting probably in hindsight before we even developed our working relationship with, but we helped them get a top 5 record at AAA and all that kind of stuff. And, they've subsequently signed, to RCA, but we have the thing, but that was a year in. Caitlin Butts is going through a moment right now where things are really cooking for her off some viral moments. So I think the good news is that you don't have to be so, beholden to, to the release. I think when you're dealing with more long form media, and more traditional media, there's a a window that you have, and because 2 or 3 months down the line, the New York Times or NPR, they're not going to think that that release is newsworthy. And so, this gives an opportunity to, as long as you're out there in storytelling, telling, the right stories and doing it imaginatively, you're not sort of, the launch of the album not that it was ever it, but to a certain degree, it was harder after 3, 4, 5 months. Mm-hmm. Now you're not so constrained by that. And so, so it gives you opportunities.
You've been very outspoken on Spotify, DSPs in general, and it's something that Mike and I have echoed. I feel like Spotify is like the quarterback of a football team. They get far too much blame for a loss and far too much credit for a win.
That's a good way to
analogy,
put it.
Dude. Yeah.
And you were one of the first people that Mike and I went, did you see what he said? Did he wrote about that? Because it's not super popular. Everybody likes to pile on.
Yeah.
One of the first things we hear is, well, Spotify doesn't pay artists enough. Well, they pay the rights holder, typically. Let's start there and see what your deal is. Mm-hmm. But you were one of the first people to say, wait a second, they may not be perfect, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on Spotify.
Well, I'll tell you how I came to that, because, and again, just like I try to be, ever learning, ever insecure about, my base of knowledge at any, point in time. And, in Spotify, this was like 2012, I guess. And they had launched in the US, and it was like people were shitting all over them, and people had strong opinions. And, the people that were, I think on the flip side, there's some people that are just so, sort of futuristic minding that they'll just sort of, kind of back anything that might be the future or anything like that. And so I was just like, okay, I've got to figure out what this really means. And about that time, my friend John Strom asked me to be on a panel at South by Southwest about Spotify. And I agreed to do it, even though I did not have anywhere near enough knowledge to do it. But I figured, like, okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to have to learn, because I'm not going to go up there and embarrass myself. And so I started calling people in Sweden, to be honest, because at that point, Spotify was 85% of the market there. And so I asked people from labels and artist managers and all that, what's been your experience? How's it? And everybody was like, it's pretty good. It's like, like there was no sort of doom and gloom. And I, again, I have a facility with math and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of just reasoned out that it was all going to be okay. I mean, even the people that were kind of pro Spotify were sort of like, oh, well, I mean, you put it up there and then maybe they'll come to your show or buy an album or buy a t-shirt. And it's like, no. This isn't a means to an end. This is the end. And I think that, I think that's been borne out. I mean, in 2014, we were a $7 billion industry, and now we're a $17 billion industry.
That's more, right?
That's more, even with inflation adjustment. And so there's no doubt that, that it's been a good thing overall. But the challenge comes in that, as a good Southerner, I like to use buckets of fried chicken as my analogy. So, okay. But like in back in the day, it was like there was like the music business was like an 8-piece bucket of chicken in the middle of the table, but there were only 4 people sitting around the table, so everybody got to eat, right? Or more or less. And then and now it's a 20-piece bucket of chicken, but the problem is there's 500 people around the table, and so the democratization of access has been a great thing overall for the industry, but it is. It's a more challenging environment because the pie gets sliced,
ever so thin,
ever more thin, which I think honestly gives more, for artists that, like I'm proud of how our model serves, artists that they get to keep a much bigger slice of their particular pie. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our artists make a lot of money through DSPs, and if you don't punch through, then you're not going to, but that's always been the way, so.
Yeah. Yet if Spotify did a committee and you were on it to improve our company for to improve Spotify, I should say, for the artist community, what do you think would be some stuff that they could do to better themselves?
I think that and again, I don't blame them for this, but I think that the algorithmic environment is sort of the antithesis of community. It tends to sort of narrowcast. It's like, oh, you like this? We'll give you more of this. You like, oh, you like that. And it tends to sort of, the momentum of algorithms sort of takes people away from community and more into this sort of, but I don't know how, any of the DSPs, serve their customers without doing something like that. I mean, I don't, it's not like, you like this, we're going to take a wild ass guess that you might like Franz Schubert too, like that's just not going to happen. Sure. It's not realistic to think that that's, going to happen. And, but I think that the more that it's, the more that it goes on, the more sort of siloed people get, and it robs them of sort of the experience of finding something new that challenges them, that opens up their world, that opens up their heart, that opens up their, just their experience in general. And I think that that's one of the great things about art and all that. And so I would say that, and that's I know a very esoteric thing I just threw out there, but I would encourage them to think about how to build communal, structures and relationships more than they are. I don't know what that looks like, and I don't know how you do it within that, but that would be the thing I would implore them to do.
Yeah, David, as we sort of wind down, I want to ask you, what's that one part of your job that you just absolutely love? And on the other side of it, what's the one thing you could probably do without?
Well, I mean, the thing that I love is the, I share A&R duties with Lee Dene, who's a great, A&R person. And I love I love being able to, listen to artists, music and sort of build the storytelling around it, and think of ways, not just, getting the story right, but to think what mediums those stories are going to translate through, and to be able to build. I mean, to me, it's a really fascinating thing that I feel like really, really serves the artist well. That's the thing that I'm the most, passionate about. I think honestly, to go back to that, to the algorithmic thing, that is my least favorite thing. I have a lot of misgivings about what that's done to, art and community and all that kind of stuff. It's just a reality. And again, I'm not blaming anybody for it, but it's kind of a drag, and to sort of feel like you're always having to sort of, hustle and tap dance to try to, to navigate the algorithm. It's important because it's a reality. And we're not, I'm not sticking my head in the sand, but that's probably my least favorite part of it.
Yeah. You've left me with a craving for fried chicken. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's
maybe a little pie.
I'm looking. That's as any good Southerner should. We like to promote. We like to promote our good Southern cuisine.
Healthy eating. The healthy eating.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was excited for him to come over because we both love coffee and music, and he's a dog guy.
Exactly. What else do you need?
And you have two good dogs.
I do. I have a couple of good.
Two good large dogs.
Yeah.
For sure. I got one more quick question, because you brought up A&R. What does A&R look like? Because you have so many different, I assume, relationships with different artists and labels that you work with. Mm-hmm. That's got to be a really interesting and yet challenging space to be an A&R person, because it can mean completely different things to your different clients.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I have a good time doing it. I try to approach it. I mean, again, I have to, my job as an A&R person is to, is to know and love human beings more, because art is not a one-way transaction. There's the art, but there's the humans that are going to experience the art. And if you don't love human beings and you don't try to understand human beings and what moves them and what motivates them, I mean, then you're not doing it all correctly. And so, I try to, but the study of human beings and loving them in their good times and in their bad times and in their joy and in their pain and all that stuff. I mean, it's part of like how you understand whether or not this artistic artifact is going to connect with them. And so it's not I don't feel a lot of like pressure to, I mean, I'm just sort of like, I don't know, maybe I've just done too many hallucinogenics, but the fear of all that, like fear is not a good environment for art to thrive in. And so I tend to just not give into any of that and be open-hearted and it's all worked out, so.
Wonderful.
It's been so great talking with you. I hope we can do this again.
For sure.
Well, thank you guys. And I just want to say, honestly, like when I was asked, like I consider you guys an invaluable resource to what I do, because
thank you.
I am not by nature a technologist. As I've discussed, algorithms do not fascinate me. But I mean, they do and they don't. But it's important that I learn, and I learn so much from listening to you guys. And and I definitely take things that I learn from the podcast, and it helps me go back to my team and stay ever present, because again, we have to be relevant in 2025 and beyond, and that means something different than what being relevant in 2023 meant. Mm-hmm. And so you guys are a real resource for helping me stay ever present, and
thank you.
Honored to come and hang out with you guys.
Yeah, this has been great.
Talk some
fantastic.
shit,
Yeah, we'll definitely do this
Let's
again.
do it again.
All right.
Doubt.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you, David.
All right.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.